Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest, Dr. Helen Wilkes. And she's here today to share with us her new book, The-Aging-of-Aquarius, Igniting Passion and Purpose as an Elder. Now, Dr. Helen has survived a lifetime of hardships, including fleeing from Nazi Germany as a child to navigating personal and professional obstacles as an adult. She has persevered and created a rich, rewarding life. Retirement has been the icing on her cake, bringing forth inner transformation and freedom. And she's here today to share with us her new book, The Aging of Aquarius. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Helen Wilkes.
Thank you for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. My goodness, what a great book. It couldn't be more timely. We've got, people who are baby boomers and Generation Xers are kind of looking like, what do we do now?
Exactly. And my book is to encourage people to move forward into the next stage of their life, which can be the best stage of their life. And I have seen that happen again and again and again.
Well, as a Generation Xer, I love hearing that. I think that's awesome. And I would love to hear, what inspired you to write this book? When you were kind of getting this together, who was it intended for?
I think it's intended for people who kind of stood at the edge, teetering, saying, but if I'm no longer my profession, who will I be? What will I do? I'm not into playing golf every day, or I'm not into gardening all the time. What am I going to do with my life? These are all creative, energetic people with more to give to the world. And my sense was that these people are giving in countless ways, and they in turn inspired me to re-examine my own premises about aging and to realize that aging in the 21st century is not what it was in my youth or even in my adult years. This is a new world and a new time for elders.
I think that's so inspiring because when people, and when I look as I'm getting older, I would like to, I want to be involved in things. I don't want there to be just an end and a retirement and then you're trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. What are your thoughts as far as some ways that we can empower elders, so that they find a purpose after retirement?
Well, I think the first step is to believe in yourself. And to believe that you have more to contribute, and that more does not necessarily mean within your profession. In some cases it can, and I know of a university researcher, he is in his 90s now and his wife as well, and together they've been working in a private lab that they set up, and they have just made some kind of a breakthrough that is going to change our treatment of cancer. That's wonderful. But we do not all have to continue in the same vein as we started professionally. So often our profession is something we fell into because we happened to be good at something in school, a certain door happened to open, but we all have sides of ourselves that we haven't yet developed. And to me, retirement is the time to develop those unused and unexplored sides of ourselves so that we can become more fully here, more fully present, more fully alive to the world.
Well, and what are some ways that we can start looking, as far as how do we rediscover or discover what our passions are?
Well, one of the things I have been persuaded to do by my publisher is to add a section at the end of every chapter with ideas and suggestions. And those are things that I want people, if they'd like to try it, to sit down alone with a pencil and paper or a pen and write what comes to them. Not enter it into a gadget of any kind. Just sit quietly with yourself. I have been told that the average person can last anywhere from 6 to 15 minutes before choosing to give himself a rather painful shock. That electric shock is easier to bear than being with your own thoughts. And I think we need to break this cycle of constant busyness so that we can go within and say, what used to matter to me and what still matters to me now?
That's so important, my goodness, and being able to sit and have that internal dialogue as we're kind of rediscovering what it is that, makes us happy in life. Because, gosh,
yes, I don't want to interrupt, but I think you just said it. I think many of us have been sold a bill of goods that happiness lies in our possessions, or happiness lies in the things that we can do to impress others with, including travel to exotic places, and various other things where we take selfies. Here I am on some mountain peak. Here I am somewhere. If you have always wanted to climb, that's very different. But if you're taking pictures just to impress other people, that's not going to bring you the kind of deep satisfaction that we all need and that we all deserve to have before we die.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and so when we are looking at what our next, this whole next segment of our life has to offer us, what are some tips that you have for our listeners that they can start implementing so it just makes that process a little bit easier?
That make it easier? Well, one thing, I believe we live in a world in which we compare ourselves too much. We all say, well, if I can't be an Olympic athlete, what's the point of even trying? If I can't be a rock star, a household name, what's the point of trying? And I tend to see myself as one little person in front of a little pond. And if I drop a pebble into that pond, it will make a ripple, and another pebble, and another pebble. So I try to think of those pebbles that I drop into the pond as aspects of myself and aspects of my world. So the first pebble will be something I do for myself because I respect myself and the person that I am becoming. The second pebble will be for my family, for the people I love most dearly and most intimately. The third pebble will be for my friends and for my broader community. What can I do for that community today? And then I try to find one more pebble that I can drop in for my world. What can I do today to make this world a better place and to feel that I have made a small contribution in the right direction, instead of allowing it all to happen and just shrugging and saying, oh, none of it is my business. We are all in a democracy involved. We are all playing an important role in ensuring that tomorrow, that our children's world, that the world we leave behind is marginally, fractionally better.
I love that because it really breaks it down easy. So we're looking at these pebbles and ways we can contribute and make impacts.
Yes, we cannot create an ocean wave with our little pebble, but we can do something. Every day we can do something. And when I go to bed at night, I try to say, so what have I done today? And what will I do tomorrow?
Oh my gosh, that's so important. That's so important. Well, and so I love how you talk about how retirement has been the icing on the cake for you. How can as we get to retirement age and we are in retirement age, how can we look to find our own icing for our cake?
Again, I think it happens by going within and by saying, what matters to me? Pleasure is important to all of us, and each of us gets pleasure in different ways. Some of us from sports, from nature, from films. But if all we do is consume products, whether those are cultural products, whether that's attending concerts, or whether that is some physical activity or whatever it is, it's when we do that I think we get our highest degree of satisfaction. So I'm thinking, for example, of a friend of mine, somebody I just knew casually. He was an accountant. He turned 65. And as a challenge to himself, he decided that for the first time in his life, he would sing in public. And he sang in public, and somebody heard him and said, "Have you ever taken a music lesson?" And he said, "No, I took piano when I was a child." And he went from there to being introduced to a voice teacher. And he is now on his way to learning to be a trained baritone at a major world-class academy of music, where he hopes to become a singer of Italian arias.
Oh my!
He's 65. He's never sung before. Didn't realize. He's turned on like never before. I see other examples of people who find things that they can do, not just consume. It's like chocolate. One piece of chocolate is great, but if all you're doing is consuming chocolate, you are not going to thrive.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I love that story and just following that passion and how things just open up for that accountant, making life such a beautiful place, something he couldn't even imagine that would happen.
Right. But I think so many people, as they stand on the verge of retirement, have gifts that they have not tapped into. And that's where I'm trying to reach people and say, this is your time to grow. This is your time to do, not just to sit back and consume and say, oh, this is the good life. I never have to do another thing. That does not bring real satisfaction.
Yeah, that gets really boring really quick.
Yes, indeed.
You can only do that for a while, and then you're like, okay, I need to do something. And I think most people feel that way, especially, I look at my life. I've been active and working all my life. Thinking of retirement isn't like a end for me. It's just a walking into another room,
It is. It's a new step. And it's a step that we should anticipate, and we should be glad of the chance to keep contributing to the world.
Mm-hmm. Being able to be there and contribute. Well, and in your book, you also talk about, being social and staying social. How important is that for us?
I think that's hugely important. I think many seniors fall into a state of semi-depression because they have lost many of their old friends, some to death, some to illness. They have lost former colleagues with whom they used to spend more time in some cases than with their own families. And so that's a huge loss. And it's important to reach out and to make new friends, including friends of the younger generation, because the younger generation does keep us involved and engaged differently, and it challenges some of our thinking. One of my chapters is called something about the bad old days, because we always talk about the good old days. And I just read something, I believe it was David Brooks, who said, none of us should ever wish to go back to the culture of the mid-20th century. It was a more racist, sexist, and anti-Semitic culture with bland food and homogeneous living arrangements. It was an enormously cold culture. Fathers, in particular, frequently were unable to express their love for their own children. Husbands were unable to see the depth in their own wives. In so many ways, life is better now than it was then. And I think that's the direction in which we all need to think. How do we keep making life better?
And isn't that the truth? You look at it, and that is what a true and beautiful statement. I think a lot of times people like to romanticize about how the good old days were maybe not as busy or things were simpler. But it definitely has a very negative side with it as well.
Right. They were simpler for some people, but they weren't simpler for everyone. And I think we've gained new awareness, and I think we are wiser and better off because we have become more aware of the other, however we define other.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and so what are some ways that seniors can, and empowered elders can also look at being out there more? Maybe, we don't have friends that are within our area or we're kind of by ourselves. What are some ways that we can get more connected with our communities?
Well, I think the first step is to leave home if you possibly can, unless you are really, really confined. I find that the moment I step out the door, there are people around me, whether you live in a big city or whether you live in a small town. Somebody's walking their dog, and you say, "Oh, what a handsome animal. How old is he?" And you start a conversation about the Great Dane, or if it's a little puppy, it goes in a different direction. Or you see somebody wearing a crazy new hat, and you say, "Oh, look at that gorgeous red hat. You must be feeling very cheerful today." You make some kind of a non-committal remark that gets you talking to other people. You go into a coffee shop. I have met some fascinating people in coffee shops just by standing in line behind them and saying, "Oh, your accent tells me you come from another country. Where are you from?" And it might be Australia, it might be England, it might be somewhere in Europe. It could be anywhere in the world. And you ask some questions, and you learn, and you grow. And it's almost like traveling in some ways to talk to these people and find out what their experience of coming to North America has been and what is happening in their world. I find that in coffee shops, I sometimes read the paper, and I look over my shoulder at other people reading the paper, and they're all by themselves. And a few times I've gone over to someone who was sitting alone at another table and said, "So what do you think of today's headlines? Do you think that's the right thing that our country should be doing, or our city should be doing, or our society should be going in this direction?" And you have a conversation, and then you're engaged differently. And in addition to that, of course, there are all the volunteer opportunities. And finally, for people who are unable, for physical reasons, to leave home, I say use the Internet. I have reached out to people, and I'm in regular conversation with people on the other side of the world who write to me about what's happening, what their headlines are today, and why they're upset, or what's bothering them, or what's going on in their world. And it expands me, it connects me to them. I think it's important that we all feel that connection in some way rather than being isolated.
Oh, without a doubt. I love in your book you talk about what your motto is, when in doubt, say yes. And I think that's such a powerful statement because it's really easy to get kind of in a pattern and comfortable in a home, kind of going,
yes,
cold, or I'm afraid to go out and meet people, or
yes, and I keep asking the question: what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you weren't having these inner voices in your head saying, "Oh, so and so would be laughing at me," or "so and so would think that I'm a fool"? It's nonsense. I'm thinking of a couple I met recently because they were in line behind me at a film, and I started talking to them because it was a long lineup, and they turned out to be fascinating people. He had been a diplomat all over the world. She had been his support and experienced so many things along with him. We saw the movie, we sat next to another, and then we went and had a coffee. And now, again, I don't see them very often, but thanks to the internet, I remain connected. He's busy writing a book about some of his experiences. She has been giving talks at various clubs and places on her experiences. And I'm connected in some way to these people that I would not normally have met, and I would certainly never have met if I only stayed home. And somewhere I read that the average senior watches 7 hours of television a day.
oh my,
And I was appalled at that number. I don't think I do that in a week. And to me, it's a symbol of the fact that we are not reaching out to one another, that we are staying home too much.
Yeah. And you hear a lot, too, that, there's this epidemic of people feeling lonely, and the cure for it is to get outside, and as you were saying, people who can't get outside, they can, connect with people on the internet. But, what a great step just to get outside and start meeting people.
Get outside, and outside always brings something. Yesterday, we are having a beautiful fall here in Vancouver on the West Coast. I saw leaves from my maple tree, and they are beautiful shades of red right now, and they were falling down. They weren't being blown sideways by the wind. They were falling like rain. And I stood and gasped because I'm not aware of ever having seen leaves fall down in that way. There is always something to see when you go out your front door. And there is always something to appreciate that makes you feel better. We live in such an incredible world. And getting out there and taking part in it, to me, is the way out. And back to your question about technology, I'm not sure I completely agree with overuse of technology. I hear that the average person now checks her email an average of 150 times a day.
Wow.
And that to me is a kind of connectedness that involves being afraid to be alone and being afraid to go within and always needing to be distracted and entertained in some way. And I don't think that's what I'm talking about when I say make friends, but talk about things that mean something to you. And don't just send selfies about whatever it is that you are doing it on that day.
Yeah, it's really important to be aware when you're online. And, of course, never share any personal information. But if you're connecting with people online, to just be very cautious and just watch that time as well, because that can be a little bit of an issue there.
I suppose, and I must admit that this is an area in which my expertise would not be great. That's, again, why younger people are needed, younger voices are needed, and younger awareness must also be part of our contribution to tomorrow.
Yeah, what's going on there? Well, and I think I have time for one more question here. You have a whole chapter in your book, on cultivating compassion. Why is that important?
I think compassion is who we are. I think we are all born with compassion. I've been doing a lot of reading, trying to understand more deeply whatever it is that I've been experiencing. And the research now shows that even babies are born with compassion. If you put babies in cribs and one of them starts to cry, you will see others start to cry right away. They share the distress. And as soon as they're able, a baby will reach out and try to touch the baby in the next crib to bring some kind of comfort. And I think for far too many of us, life has hardened us, and life has made us tough. And life has made us feel that it's a very competitive dog-eat-dog world, and if we don't get in there first and grab our share, and perhaps even more than our share, somebody else will take it away from us. And apparently that is not the case. Research has also shown that hunter-gatherers used to share their prey. And if they brought down a large animal and some member of the community tried to take more than his share, that would not be allowed. Things were divided equally, no matter who you were within the clan, the group. And I think we've lost sight of that need to share with one another and to care for one another. And the elders that I see around me, and I notice it particularly in the men, they seem to get softer and more caring and more compassionate as they age. Instead of being Mr. Macho, Mr. Tough Guy, they feel sadness at what's happening. For example, in Vancouver, I live in an area where we have what we call the downtown east side, where we're having a huge drug epidemic. And men who at one time might have scoffed are out there handing out sandwiches and trying to help those who so desperately need help. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that compassion makes each of us a better human being also.
Yeah, without a doubt, and especially when we look at, I do this all the time. I look at, my purpose in life and how important it is that every connection I have with people be as impactful in a positive way as possible with them. And so, those things matter, especially as we have time to kind of reflect on these things a little bit more. I think it allows us to kind of get our perspective in order in regards to what's really important in life.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so with all of this, your book is such a fabulous resource, The Aging of Aquarius, and it provides so much information and tools and resources, and I love that you have just information for, I don't think it's too early at any age to really read this book, because it really kind of helps people, I think, just be better human beings.
I think so. I hope so. I think as elders, we share so much with younger generations who want to find purpose in life. And purpose is so unique to each person. But it does involve allowing you to express your deepest longings and give yourself permission to do what you've always dreamt of doing and yet were afraid to do. I find myself getting braver in my old age rather than more fearful. I have nothing left to lose by reaching out to a stranger. I have nothing left to lose by being kind. I have nothing left to lose by stretching that inner side of myself and making it grow as best I can. And I think that is the path that somehow we all need to follow, no matter what our age, no matter what our challenges. And there's no one who does not have challenges of one kind or another. Our physical aging is only one small challenge.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes, and I often tell myself, I've just seen a film on some scenes in other countries I won't mention, and I kept thinking how fortunate we all are to be in North America, where most of us, so many of us, feel secure, feel safe. We are not striving to find clean drinking water on the whole. We are not striving to so many things, tomorrow's meal. I have a refrigerator full of food. I have a cupboard that has more food in it. How lucky can I get? I have a roof over my head. I know there are people in my own society that don't have that, and I want them to have those things. But I have so much already. How can I not want to share what I have in some measure?
That is just beautiful. Oh, my goodness. Dr. Wilkes, we can speak all day on your book. My goodness, it's such a great inspiration for so many people. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about all the great work that you're doing?
Well, thank you very much. I have a website called helenwilkes.ca, and I would welcome people to go to that. I've been trying to add things to that website as I have time. I've got a section on books that I've been reading that I think might help other people to also find a path inward and to the next life. And my publisher is New Society. So if you reach out to them, you can order books, or, of course, they should all be available in your local bookstore. They may need to order them, especially in the States, but I understand there are distributors taking them all around the country, and I hope that is the case. And I welcome the readers and hope that I can be useful to them.
Well, Dr. Helen, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
My pleasure, and thank you to your listeners as well.
Well, thank you, Dr. Helen. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, The Aging of Aquarius. The Aging of Aquarius is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and, of course, all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.